Hello, I'm attorney Rachel Cheek. Thank you for tuning in to the Hill and Broughton live stream. And I'm joined by attorney Allison Reddick. Hey, Allison.
Hello, how are you today?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Good. It's been a minute since we've done this together, so we gotta warm up with some easy questions, hopefully.
Yes, let's get started. Okay, I'll take the first one. So, all right. So Darwin Nolan says he's rated 100%, has IU. Okay, so first of all, I want to know if that's actual rating or that's TDIU benefits alone. 70% for PTSD, 10% for tinnitus, and 0% for hearing loss. I filed for aid in attendance, erectile dysfunction, sleep apnea, and chronic fatigue syndrome. All of those, great idea to file. Those are very common secondary to PTSD. I submitted the claims before my intent to file 1st August. In 30 days, I'll have the 2680, the form for aid in attendance, a diagnosis, a DBQ, and a nexus. All right, set up. I didn't file for PTSD increase, but VA has scheduled an exam for PTSD increase on the 8th of August. I'm 55, PTSD and IU. Okay, so I'm guessing that's the PTSD is why you have the IU. It's dated November 16th, 2020. It's been 11 days since my PTSD exam, and it lasted over 30 minutes. I believe I hit all the key stressor points. Will validate increase, but definitely maintain the 70%. If reduced, that will jeopardize my claim for aid in attendance. What should be my strategy? Okay, well, first off, Darwin, you've done very well already. In 30 days, you're going to have everything that you need. I'll tell you the reason why PTSD examination was scheduled was, well, actually, it could have been if you listed it on as part of your need for aid in attendance. Sometimes VA will relook at things then. But Allison, what do you think?
I think at this point, no strategy. You just wait for VA to make a decision. But once it seems like you filed those claims and you are kind of evidence gathering, which is fine. But as soon as you get your evidence, submit it. Like if you haven't submitted the 2680, I would go ahead and submit that. I would submit diagnoses if you have for chronic fatigue or sleep apnea. While those are common secondary to PTSD, you still may need a medical opinion for them, especially the chronic fatigue. But I would wait to see what happens in the C&P exam, because lately I've been seeing some C&P examiners will give sleep apnea. Some of them still say that they are unrelated. But I think you're in good shape where you are right now. A common misnomer is that you have to have 100% rating for aid in attendance. That's not true. So can your reduction affect your aid in attendance claim? Yes, because they probably will say, them being the regional office, you don't have 100% rating, so you can't have aid in attendance. But that's not true. There's nowhere in the regulations would state that you must have 100% rating or individual unemployability or something like that. So I think you're in an okay spot, and just wait and see what happens. And if you have additional questions once the decision comes out, you're good to go. My only concern would be that since your aid in attendance is based off of PTSD, that can bring up issues of competency. So I would be wary of that, whether you're able to complete your finances, manage your finances. Don't
direct someone else
or direct someone else to, but like don't be concerned if that happens. If it does, I'm just saying, when I see PTSD, higher ratings and aid in attendance competency can be an issue, but that's easily rectified with a letter from your doctor saying that you can manage your finances or direct someone to. But that's just a light bulb that goes off for me when I hear higher ratings trying to get higher than 70% than PTSD and aid in attendance and things like that. But I think thus far you've done a great job. And if they do deny your additional claims, you're at 100%. You don't necessarily need them, but if you do want them, you can get a nexus opinion for them, because there's definitely medical research for sleep apnea and chronic fatigue secondary to PTSD.
And then one last thing, just you said, what should be your strategy? You believe that the CMP exam went well. If you get a decision and it tries to reduce your PTSD or say it's gotten better, in that case, your strategy needs to be to actually give evidence to show that the CMP exam is wrong. So just your own account of remembering, like, take a look at the form, ask for a copy of the CMP exam from the VA. You should be able to take a look at it and note if, the examiner didn't write down things you said, or things were misconstrued, things like that. That would be
It
good.
has to be reduced based off of one exam. They do that all the time. I cannot tell you, like, this is the year of severances and reductions. Like, I am seeing them left and right all over the place. Not that doesn't mean that's gonna happen. I don't, want to scare people, but that is always a possibility. But I mean, if you have the evidence supporting it, it can easily be fixed. It just, takes time.
Yeah, and if we have any questions in the chat about severance or reduction, that would be great too. I'd like to address them just because it is so common recently. Next question.
Yolanda Adams. Okay, for aid in attendance due to PTSD, burning up and melting pots, and forgetting to take medication. Oh, okay, like cooking. Does this subject me to incompetency hearing, fiduciary guardianship, and loss of civil rights with someone else handling my finances? One H&P video says it does. Other than not applying, how do I avoid fiduciary being found incompetent? This will cause severe hostile reaction for me. Sister was tortured and killed by guardian. Oh, I'd rather burn down my house than have that. I've heard some bad fiduciary stories, so I completely understand. Are you VA overpaying? You want to pause there?
Let's answer this first one. Can you go back to the number one? Okay. So this is actually exactly what we were just talking about. When seeking an attendance for mental health, something that VA will look at is competency. But just because like, hey, I can't cook, I will walk away and set a fire, and I need reminders to take my medications, or I just won't do it. Those things support aid in attendance. And you can have those disabilities or those problems without being financially incompetent. When VA talks about incompetency, it is only referring to your ability to manage your finances, to know what's coming in your house, to know what bills are going out, being aware of major payments that are going in and out. But that's easy enough, as Allison said, that's easy enough to disprove, even if VA does try to propose incompetency. Do you want to handle that one?
Yeah, I've never had a situation where incompetency has been proposed and filing a letter from a provider didn't fix it. Like, I've never had them come back and be like, well, we disagree. Because obviously your personal providers or your VA providers or whomever are going to know you best. So just getting like, if it is proposed, just getting a letter from a provider saying, you're able to manage your finances or direct someone to is fine. If you aren't able to get that, then maybe you shouldn't be managing your finances. And if it is that kind of situation, then you can try to set up to have someone in your family be your fiduciary, your spouse, a family member over the age of 18. You can ask for a specific person to be your fiduciary and not have a random person be appointed.
Yes. And you can also, that's jumping to assuming incompetency is like proposed and like gone through with. You also, part of the criteria, which they don't always look at, is another, like, are you able to manage your own finances, or can you direct another person to do so? So if you have a trusted person, spouse, family member, close friend who, you're aware of what goes on, but maybe they actually write the checks or log on and pay the bills. That doesn't mean you're incompetent. It just means you have an agreement where this other person handles the finances. So do keep in mind that a lot of times I'll have veterans answer and they'll say, they'll ask the question, do you manage the money? And they'll say, oh no, my wife does that, or my spouse does that. That is not quite the criteria to find incompetency, but VA a lot of times stops there. So if you do have anyone who helps you currently, you need to note that and be very clear. Like, I know what's coming in. I know what my VA payments are. I know what my debts are. Don't not apply for it just because of a possible incompetency hearing. I agree with Allison. A lot of times when they're proposed, I've never seen one be completed where the veteran wasn't actually incompetent and was like, yeah, you know what, I don't handle this. So don't let that stop you from claiming benefits that you should have.
They're doing the incompetency to protect you. They want to make sure that no one is taking advantage of you, or like that your money is being mishandled, things like that. Like, I don't see it ever coming from a negative aspect, in my opinion, because I've seen situations where I've had incompetent veterans and someone in their family was taking advantage of them and taking all their money. So it's those bad situations where, VA is more hypersensitive and they'll over predict and over propose rather than under. But like we said, a letter from your doctor, I've never not seen them accept that in my experience. Okay, let's flip through to part 3 at least. Okay, VA overpaying for SMCS, PTSD increased to 100%. First letter said effective date was 4/25, but file date was 4/5.
No.
4/5 was 12/20. Second letter stated a queue is found and entitled to SMC at the housebound level from December 16th, 2020 is moved. They gave 60 days to argue. Effective date 12/20 is correct. It's okay. Otherwise, I have to pay it back. Paid $22,000 and back pay back to 1/21. So they increase you to 100%, but only from April of this year. So then you wouldn't have been entitled to SMCS until April of this year. The only way to get around that would be to prove that you were entitled to 100% rating prior to April of this year. I see overpayment issues all the time. You can try to ask for a waiver, especially if it was their fault that they made the mistake, and usually I'll see them accept that. Do you have any comments on that, Rachel?
No, I agree. I think if that sounds like their mistake to not to give the wrong effective date. That shouldn't be, unless you misrepresented something, that you shouldn't have to pay that $22,000 back. I agree with Allison. Take a look at that letter, the proposal. There should be some information on there as far as how to contact the Debt Management Center. That is where you're going to file your waiver. Most of those are going to be dealt with veterans directly. We don't always handle Debt Management Center issues, but I do know I have seen waivers be applied for amounts much larger than this that VA accidentally overpaid, and the waivers be granted. So it's not, don't take it as though it's, you owe that money. Absolutely. Go ahead and.
I've seen $100,000 waiver. Okay, next question.
Right. What should we expect at a PTSD CMP examination for an increase from 70% to 100%? What advice to give? You have a claim for PTSD from 70% to 100% and an IU claim that was filed together. Is that two exams or done at the same time? Any advice to give? Thanks. We do have some advice, I think.
It's two exams or not, because you would think it would be one. Sometimes it's two, because if you filed a supplemental claim and an 8940, I've seen where they will separate those out and they will give you two different exams. Hopefully it's only one. But yeah, that's the main comment I wanted to make on that. Go ahead, Rachel.
Just as far as from 70%, trying to go from 70% to 100%. The VA rating criteria is available online for anyone. Hopefully Nate can pop it in, a link to the Code of Federal Regulations. But the mental health conditions are all going to be rated under the same criteria, which you can see. 100% is going to be very severe symptoms, as you might imagine. You're going to be looking things that are not considered in the lower 70% or below categories are going to be things like persistent delusions or hallucinations, seeing or hearing things that aren't there, grossly inappropriate behavior, which is things like, walking outside naked as a jaybird, going out in the rain and you're in your Speedo. I don't know why these all involve little clothing. Cutting up and like laughing at a solemn event like church or a funeral, just being, hollering in a very quiet environment. Just think of things grossly inappropriate. Just like, what would your mom tell you as a kid? That's inappropriate. Other ones,
to yourself or others.
Persistent danger of harming yourself or others. Yes. So that can be recurrent suicidal ideation with attempts. That can be if you get extremely irritable, violent, have gotten asked to leave doctor's appointments. You might have notes in your VA records. I've definitely seen that. Where, if you have cognitive issues or behavioral issues where it's like, once you get started, you just can't stop and run the risk of endangering yourself or other people. That is going to be in the 100%.
Basically, it's really severe symptoms. It's scheduling 100% rating for mental health, and scheduling 100% mental health. What comes up? Competency. I see that a lot, but it really depends on your examiner. I mean, I see people who don't have any of those symptoms, and the examiner will give them 100% rating. And I don't fight it. More likely, though, would be to get individual unemployability based off the 70% rating, which 99% of the time, which is my made up percentage, it's going to be denied. I always see a denial first time for TDIU because they think if they deny it, you're not going to appeal it. So if it's denied, don't be disheartened. Just submit statements or evoke report or any additional evidence that will support it. But advice is just to be honest about your symptoms. A lot of veterans fear discussing passive suicidal ideation because they think that they're going to get Baker Acted or hospitalized. Unless you're saying very specific acts that are going to harm other people, that's most likely not going to happen. Our advice would be just to be honest with your symptoms, be thorough with them, and that's really it.
Think about your worst day in addition to however you feel, at the exam. You might have a good day then, but think about symptoms that feel worse.
Okay, let's see. John Bull. Oh, Carol. Well, I'll pretend to be Carol. Maybe. We'll see. Maybe Rachel. 100% coronary, 70% TBI, 50% headaches, 50% sleep apnea, 40% radiculopathy left, 40% right, 40% degenerative disc, 30% radicularly right, femoral, 30% rating, assuming left, femoral, 10% left foot plantar, 0% hypertension. Okay, lots of zeros. SMCK, SMCS for the here. What do you have? 100% for heart, and then SMCL. That's aid and attendance. H&P working on SMCT for TBI. Should I apply for SMCL for 100% for coronary? Okay, so he has SMCL for TBI. Go back.
I'm glad you said we're working on SMCT because I immediately was like,
yeah.
Oh, okay, we got that.
Okay, so you you don't have SMCS anymore since you have SMCL. You lose you get whatever is higher. And so SMCL is a higher payment rate. So you have aid and attendance based off of your TBI. Since you have aid and attendance based off of your TBI, that's the route that I would go, because The reason SMCT was created was to carve out a way for higher aid and attendance needs for people who didn't have basically loss of use symptoms, in my opinion. Even if you get another SMCL for the coronary, you really need some kind of loss of use in order to get to it. I know, but
Be careful.
realistically, your best bet is to just work on the SMCT. But go ahead and be Carol on what you think.
I think that you should go ahead and file an attendance for the coronary artery disease because Allison's right. Like, and I agree. If I hadn't seen that you said we're already working on SMCT, you'd be like, don't even worry too much. But I do think, that's something that could help you in the meantime while you're working towards SMCT. So if you need aid and attendance for your 100% heart rating, you can apply for that. Now, of course, it's got to be a specific finding that the aid and attendance is due to your heart and that it's separate from your TBI. So the symptoms that cause you to need A&A for your TBI are probably going to be things like related to cognitive or memory, mental health, I'm going to imagine. So it's really important if you're trying to get another SMCL rating that you distinguish the symptoms because we'll get there in a second. You need to distinguish the symptoms. So for coronary artery disease, I imagine that's going to be things like shortness of breath, dizziness. You probably have trouble doing, if it's 100%, you have trouble, probably showering is exhausting.
Getting dressed.
What's that?
Getting dressed.
Getting dressed. Yeah. I mean, we've talked to veterans who, if you're not really thinking about getting dressed, that takes a minute, 2 minutes. For people with severe heart disease, that can take upwards of half an hour to just kind of take a rest between each thing, put your clothes on. I don't need to tell you what your symptoms are, but you need to emphasize the symptoms caused by the heart condition that are separate from the TBI because you've got SMCL, aid and attendance for TBI. If you have another SMCL for aid and attendance for heart disease, and that is separate and distinct from your TBI aid and attendance, VA rules hold that basically that qualifies you for a higher level of SMC called SMCO. SMCO with your need for aid and attendance is going to get you to at least R1. Now, as far as the SMCT, that is the highest payment. So I agree with Allison, that's really the one to go for. But if you apply for aid and attendance related to your heart only, that might be a way to at least get your monthly payments up while you're waiting for them to get that SMCT right.
Another thing is it looks like there's lots of half steps you can get right now. At SMCL, every additional 50% rating that you have that isn't being considered is a half step. So you should have a half step for the headaches. You should have a half
TBI.
What?
No,
TBI. Sleep apnea. He could have all of the ortho issues together. That could be a half, potentially a full step. Like he should be at least up to M.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we got to take a look at like exactly what, because those steps that we're talking about, they have to be unrelated to whatever causes you to need aid and attendance. So that's why I said no, headaches.
Well, but the whole coronary artery disease, that would be a full step.
That would be a full step,
right there.
That would get you to SMCM. Say sleep apnea, M.5. Yeah.
Ortho issues, that's another.
Possibly a full step, definitely a
So
couple halves.
I hope we'll have to figure out whose team he's on because there are easy additional benefits that you should have based on the ratings you have. SMCT, SMCR1, SMCL, those are going to be more difficult to get, but based on the statutory regulations, you should have a higher SMC level, in my opinion.
I agree. Okay, whose turn? My turn?
Yep.
All right, 8-part question. Okay, all right. Memories activated. Okay, EJO notes, NIS was denied service connection with BDD. What does that stand for? Not sure. Okay. Let us know if you have that denied service connection, even though I have evidence from active duty, paratrooper 4 years, right knee injury while deployed, MP duties, acted like infantry on deployments, put on permanent profile that included knees for the last 2 years of active duty, almost medical boarded for back and knees, active duty x-rays, year before discharge showed mild osteoarthritis in both knees, bad CMP x-rays read incorrectly, said knees were normal. Decision letter mentions the right knee injury in 2000, then the 2004 knee pain, and that I was treated conservatively and released. No mention of permanent profile in effect until discharge, paratrooper, etc. All of these things that clearly show there's an issue in service. It only talks about the bad CMP where the doctor didn't note symptoms I reported and CMP incorrectly read normal x-rays. They didn't review my medical records, don't think VA provided them. Even if they do provide them, they are not going to review it. So unfortunately, that's pretty common. Years later, I got my C file. So after this initial decision, got my C file, and the 2005 x-rays are not in there, even though under evidence, the rater lists service treatment records until discharge date. They are in the records. I got a copy. I'm going to file supplemental. New x-rays also show arthritis. MRIs show it. Infusion. The VA PCP is going to do nexus and DBQ. Were there enough errors with the first denial? Appeal denied, bad BSO, no further evidence to fight for back pay from the first denial 20 years ago. How best to deal with this when filing supplemental? Lawyer needed or not. Appreciate all your help. Thanks for so much for all that you do. Okay. I shouldn't even be surprised, but holy cow, that is a really big error from VA, in my opinion, if all of these things, they may not have been in your records, those service treatment records, for whatever reason, they might not have been in your file at the time VA made that initial decision 20 years ago. But if they were added at any point later in their service records, or you have them that VA doesn't have and can submit them with this supplemental appeal, service records are treated kind of differently than any other type of evidence because they can actually reopen an old claim if it was denied for lack of records. If it was denied for lack of records and then the records later are found associated with your file, you can then potentially claim an earlier effective date. Allison, sorry. Let me finish my thought first. Because you just saying paratrooper, like that in and of itself is ridiculous that I didn't note it. However, you're going to have to look at that decision because depending on how it was worded, depending on why they denied, you may or may not be able to go back. Allison, give me some thoughts on this.
It depends. I cannot make a decision without looking at it. Q claims are really, 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 really hard. And they are more rare than I think people think they are. I don't know. I would have to see your C file potentially with all of the things that are missed, but sometimes they can be shady and put in your rating decision that all treatment records were reviewed, and still say that even though they were added later, that no, they were reviewed and what the rating decision says stands. It also has to be like, just because those records weren't there, it depends on why it was denied. Was it denied because of a lack of diagnosis? Was it denied because of a lack of a nexus opinion? I mean, there are so many potential factors at play. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of errors made and it definitely does need to be reviewed. But my standpoint is always work on service connection first, and then the evaluation, and then effective date is the last thing. Like, you got to get service connection first. Once you get service connection, then you can start worrying about everything else. But yeah.
Totally agree. A lot of times I feel like, and understandably so, clients who have been denied, 15, 20 years ago wrongly, want us to go back and look. But Allison's totally right. Like, service connection has to come first. I have no doubt, based on what you told us, Ejo, that you
It
should
should be service connected. Absolutely.
Yes. The only question is the effective date. But go ahead and submit all that evidence that, we discussed. You mentioned you're going to have a nexus letter. All of that should be perfectly sufficient to get you service connection. Then go ahead and then you can start worrying about the effective date. Give us a call. I definitely think it's something that needs those type of cases going back so far really need an in-depth look. Like, you got to look at every page of the claims file, basically.
Tiny. So I would like to understand if the VBA judge takes into consideration a veteran's problem list and medical records, and if being treated for them is enough evidence. I would hope they would take into consideration the problem list. If you're discussing VA records, when I see the problem list, those are all of the diagnoses that the veteran currently has. Sometimes the problem list isn't all thorough, though. Like, sometimes I'll go through assessments and find additional diagnoses. But yeah, I mean, is that something that they should be taking into consideration? Yes, because if listed in your problem list is PTSD, then that means you have a diagnosis of PTSD, and whether you're being treated for it. I will see rating decisions every day where they say it was denied due to no diagnosis, and then I will search problem lists exactly and find the missing diagnosis right there in the problem list. So I'm assuming at the board they're doing a more thorough review than they are at the regional office, but yes, they should be taking that into account. Rachel, any thoughts?
It's enough evidence for a diagnosis. It's not necessarily going to be enough for a nexus, because it's just going to show that you've been treated for the problem. However, just like Allison said, if, say, it's something like PTSD or whatever is on appeal is noted in your problem list, that at least would let, I wouldn't count on the RO, but the judges at least, that will at least let them know there are records to look at. They probably, like Allison said, they're going to do a more thorough review. So say it's listed on your problem list and you have treatment for it, they should look at it as long as it's within the evidence deadline. John Gold again. All right. Oh boy. When notified that BVA judge is looking at your case, but this was in April and now it's the end of August, what is the legal term to file a get going on this case that can be filed with CAVC? Okay. Years, honestly. The BVA is very backed up. They are very slow to move. There's not much. I think you're referring to a writ, possibly. The legal term for something to be filed to say, hey, get moving. Depends when your appeal was. If your appeal is from anytime the last 3 years, and unless you're over 75 or otherwise eligible for advancement on the docket, you're going to be waiting up to 2 or 3 years. I have seen a lot of decisions I have coming in from 2021 and 2022 lately from the board. Now, that being said, I want to hear what Allison has to say.
I mean, what does looking at mean? So basically, when you have power of attorney, we can go in and see if it's been assigned, if it's been distributed to a judge, if it's been assigned to an attorney advisor, if it's pending signature. Like, there are so many phases that it could be that's what I would need to see. Like, if it's not distributed, it can be years, like Rachel said. What lane is it in? Is it legacy? Is it AMA? If it's legacy, you're more likely to get a decision sooner than AMA. Direct review, last I looked, they were in 2024. But these are only like my specific cases. Evidence lane, the most recent one I saw, like, that was assigned, that's like, it's either not distributed or assigned, was like sometime in 2023. But I mean, sometimes I'll see them pending signature for like 2 months. I'm like, what are you doing? Can you just sign it and release it? We have very little pull at the board. Like, they are their own entity and they don't like to be told what to do. So unless you have an extenuating circumstance, if you have advance on the docket, or it's been 3+ years, you can write a writ. But unfortunately, most of the time you just have to wait and for a decision to come out, and then you can go up to CAVC.
I do have one thing to note, John, which is, when did you file this appeal, and what date was the decision that you appealed? And I say that because I saw it's in our notes, the Williams waiver. Essentially, VA has a rule where if you file an appeal, say you get a decision, what is today? August 19th, 2024. All right. You have until August 19th, 2025 to appeal. Well, the board has a rule that if you file an appeal onto a rating decision and you still have a period of time, say 6 months, where the appeal timeline is not over, meaning, it's not August 19th, 2025 anymore, the VA holds that appeal and doesn't even distribute it until a year has passed from the rating decision that was appealed. And the reason for that is it gives you time to change your mind. Say you file a hearing and you actually are like, no, I want to do evidence. I direct review, and you need to add evidence. Whatever the case may be, if the decision that you appealed and you're waiting on at the board is less than a year old, you should write to the board and let them know, hey, I waive my time to change lanes, provided that you do. Lanes meaning, which BVA option did you take? Did you take the hearing? Did you take evidence? Did you take direct review? No matter what you took, if you're within a year of that decision that you appealed, VA is going to hold it, and they're not even going to distribute it for a year or until that appeal period is up. So if this was a late 2004 or an early 2005, 2024, 2025 decision, you would probably be best off to get with the board, let them know, I don't want to switch lanes. I'm waiving my time to switch lanes. Go ahead and make a decision as soon as possible. Now, you still have the whole wait, period. Once it's actually assigned and the appeal period is over, you're still looking at a long wait like we talked about, but that can cut down a lot of time where the BVA is not doing anything, just holding it in case you change your mind.
Yeah, but I mean, I agree with them holding off, because I'll have clients come where a VSO filed their appeal in the hearing lane, and I'm like, no offense to VSOs are great. And I'm like, we could get this fixed in higher level review. And I have enough time to be able to withdraw that and save literally years of wait time.
It's good. It's good. It's better to have to opt out of the period than have to opt into it. But it can lead to a delay if you already know what you're going to appeal. You've got your evidence. It could just be sitting there.
Tiny. Is there a difference between the word static versus chronic when a VA PCP describes a condition? I thought they mean the same thing. Static is more, it's not changing, whereas chronic means something that is like over a long period of time. That's my understanding between the difference of them. And they're used in different contexts. It depends on the body system. Like chronic, you see chronic a lot with like chronic sinusitis, chronic rhinitis. It's like something that you consistently have issues with, versus acute, where you have like an episode and then it goes away. Whereas static more or less would mean that you've kind of had the same symptoms and they haven't really fluctuated or changed over time. Do you have a different understanding? I mean, that's just off the dome. Do you have a different understanding of that?
No, I think as far as medically, like in the PCP notes, I think that's correct off the dome. But the only difference I would say, when the VA like rating agency uses static and chronic, those are going to be different. When you see it in like just so you guys know, if you see it in like a appeal for disability benefits or a claim, and they refer to a chronic condition, that can refer to a condition that you've had since service and has had continuous symptoms. There's certain provisions for service connection for certain chronic diseases, meaning, you've had them since that time. Again, that's just, what the heck am I trying to say? Where do we work? The VA disability side. And then static, if you see in connection with VA claims, is going to mean conditions that are not expected to improve, that are going to stay the same. Usually, if you have a static condition, that means you're not going to get another CMP exam for it unless you file a specific claim relating to it. Because if it's static, it's not going to improve. It might not get worse in VA's eyes. They're not going to look at it unless you ask them to. Next question. All right, another step asks, filed for GERD last year right after the rating change. Dang. I had a diagnosis, 2011, service treatment records, hernia, independent medical opinion, and upper GI results from VA that explained my worsening condition. VA sent me to CMP. Question from Rater. To examiner, what? Oh God, I hate those questions. Okay, the question from the Rater to the examiner was, can his GERD be secondary to his service-connected IBS? Examiner said no, and I was denied. My understanding is that GERD can be secondary to IBS. Am I correct? And if so, what are my next steps? I don't know, I'm not a doctor, but that sounds right. You'd have to get the medical nexus, which it sounds like you did for IBS. But this doesn't actually sound like a secondary issue. It sounds like another question the Rater should have asked is, sure, okay, can it be secondary, but can it also be directly service connected? Because it sounds like you've had those symptoms. You mentioned you have service treatment records. Sounds like you've had those symptoms since service. So I would appeal with that. There's a couple things that you should, okay, this is what I would do. A couple things to point out. First, I would note, just like you did, the evidence that supports it, including the nexus. Then you want to see the nexus. What does it say it's related to? Does it just say at least as likely as not due to service, at least as likely as not secondary to IBS, whatever? You want to point that out because it sounds like they didn't look at your nexus. One way or another, it should have been somehow related to your service. And then I would also note that, okay, sure, look at it secondary. If you can't grant it secondary, look at it directly because they didn't. The only question they answered was, is it secondary? And direct service connection has a whole different set of standards. Allison?
I don't think it's secondary. I think they're two separate conditions in two different areas. I think they coexist and they're comorbid. I think what more likely would be that whatever caused your IBS probably also caused the GERD. I don't think that the IBS caused the GERD. I think whatever caused your IBS also caused the GERD because they're both functional GI issues that something caused them. And I don't necessarily think it's secondary too. I think that kind of was a cop-out question for the Rater to kind of avoid direct service connection. But yeah, but I'm not a doctor though. If you have a nexus opinion from a doctor saying that it is secondary to, then I'm sure your doctor has way more credentials than the CMP examiner does. But yeah, I would think that they're more comorbid and they coexist and they were probably caused by the same thing. And so if you're whatever caused your IBS, whether it was some kind of exposure, I mean, is this like a PACT Act issue? Then you can use that to connect the GERD as well.
Yes. Next steps, I would say, if all of that you told us, the service records, the IMO, nexus letter, all of that was submitted by the time you got the decision, higher level review appeal.
And ask for an opinion based on direct service connection, because they may have only given an opinion on secondary. Okay, Kent Griever. A couple weeks ago, I asked about CAR HLR, and Matthew said I could submit it myself without an accredited representative. A staff attorney in one of your short videos said otherwise. Oh, awkward. Since I submitted the 0996 with CAR written at the top, what will the VA do with it? So I don't know. I don't think you have to be an attorney. Honestly, what it means is it's claims accuracy review or claims accuracy request, something like that, where if within your decision is within a month, they're trying to fix the errors that were like really simple, easy things that shouldn't have been made. So usually like effective date errors, or if they like miss something in the record that clearly shows that it should have been service connected. Presumptive issues, like they said you weren't exposed to something and you actually were, things like that are really simple and easy to fix. So if you wrote CAR at the top and it was within the last month, then they should do a CAR. However, if it doesn't meet the requirements for a CAR, like CAR isn't going to make substantive, is that a word? substantive decisions. They're not going to say whether like the nexus opinion was wrong, or like, you know, you had another nexus opinion and it wasn't reviewed. Like those are substantive issues. They're only going to make really simple procedural or like evidence gathering issues. So what's going to happen is if it qualifies for CAR, then they should make a decision. If it doesn't, all that's going to happen is they're going to put it in higher level review. So it's not like they're going to reject your claim or anything like that. It's still going to get decided. It's just not going to get decided as quickly. I mean, I've seen CAR decisions in less than a week. And sometimes I'll file it and they don't think it falls within the CAR's guidelines, and I'll see a decision in 3 months because they just put it in higher level review instead.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I don't know about the conflicting information. I don't think you should. You should be able to represent yourself and file the same thing anyone else.
And it's not going to hurt anything. You put CAR
Yeah.
on there, it's just going to put it in higher level review. I say go for it.
Yeah. And that's actually, I'll say that real quick. For the CAR review, highly recommend that for anyone watching and you get a decision and you're within 30 days and it's a big issue, like Allison said. Say they granted service connection for something, but gave your effective date of like the CMP exam 3 weeks ago. Meanwhile, you've been appealing this for years. That like you can go ahead and try a CAR. Like Allison said, the worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to just treat it like a normal higher level review. But they have been handling those that they do find to be CAR very quickly, less than a month. So if it fits within that category, that's a great avenue to try.
The errors that I see most are it's a higher level review and they will do the effective date to the date of the duty to assist error, which I don't even know where they get that date from, or it'll be a supplemental and it's a supplemental appeal, but they only give it back to the supplemental claim date rather than, you know, the continuously pursued issue. So you can't just file a CAR and expect them to know what you're asking for. Like you need to include a little paragraph on your appeal form saying, hey, I have been continuously pursuing this since this date and you only gave it to me from the date of the duty to assist error. Like that's incorrect. This needs to be fixed.
Okay, Mickey Doodle says, I'm 100% P&T. My GI Bill is used. What other forms of help can I get for school? Thanks for all you do. Ooh, that's actually a great question because we don't handle a lot of education claims. So I don't want to give you any advice that could be incorrect. The only thing I would say is if you haven't already looked at vocational, it's not vocational rehabilitation anymore, vocational readiness and employment. VRE, the VA runs that program. It's to help veterans with service-connected disabilities. It provides training, that kind of thing. If you haven't already done that, definitely take that route. I don't know how much schooling that takes care of. I think it does to some extent, but I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. Allison, do you know anything school related?
Veteran Readiness and Employment, VRE. And 100% permanent total, you can get dependent assistance. We don't really handle that. So Timothy Cohen. Okay. Pending an upcoming HLR level review based on the fact that the local regional office decided not to adjudicate my claim for aid and attendance, stating that the issue is already on appeal at the BVA. What's on appeal at the BVA is Barry v. McDonough, seeking an increased level of, based on service-connected conditions rated 50% or more, that, oh, okay, for S&C, yeah, the steps. Rachel, go ahead.
So it's extremely.
Oh wait, here we go. What's the best argument I can use to convince the DRO that multiple S&C claims can proceed at the same time, if not based on the same factual issue? Different legal theories equal not duplicative.
Well, good luck. If you find one that will convince the regional office to not, that they can process two different SMC, appeals at the same time, then please let us know what you did, because that is a very frustrating thing about SMC. Even though there's so many different ways to get it, from loss of use to aid and attendance to, in your case, you're trying to jump up in disability ratings using Barry v. McDonough based on your combined conditions. The VA looks at all of that SMC and they look at it all together. So what your best bet is to probably do, and can we go to part 1?
It's an HLR.
Okay, it's an HLR. I mean, you can make your argument if you've got an HLR, go ahead and make the argument if you've got an informal conference requested. And if you don't, you can request one. You should be able to request one still. I would just point out that they're for different reasons. Like your aid and attendance claim is based on certain disabilities that maybe aren't going to be considered in the jumping claim at the board. I think the reason, can I see number 2, please? See English level. Okay. Yeah, so basically if you're going for SMCL and SMCM, a higher level of SMC is already on appeal at the board. They just look at, is it a higher level of SMC? They don't care what the letter you're asking for is. L for aid and attendance, M plus in this case, M.5. What you should do, let the board make their decision. And what you can do is from there, once you get the board decision, regardless of what it is, even if it grants, your higher ratings like you're asking for, you can file a supplemental appeal after the board decision asking for aid and attendance. And you would phrase it as a higher level of SMC. Because if VA is going to treat it all like it's the same thing, SMC can't be handled at the RO because it's at the board, fine, do what they say. Then when you get the board decision, bring in aid and attendance from there. You're going to want to phrase it as higher level of SMC, and then you specify what it is. But you're welcome to try, like I said, in the informal conference, but I really have not. I've fought that myself and have not been very successful in getting VA to differentiate SMC claims.
It depends on the decision review officer you get for your higher level review. There are some good ones that will listen to your argument and realize that it's separate, and maybe they'll grant it. So I think the fact that you did go to higher level review is your best bet. And because like the initial decision or even a supplemental claim, like I don't know who is reviewing those or why or like how. And a lot of times they're just trying to find an easy way to get a quick decision. So they'll just be like, oh, no, that's on appeal. Can't make a decision. Though I agree with Rachel, like most likely they're going to say, the board has jurisdiction since SMC as a whole is, one entity. But you never know. There's some really good decision review officers out there that might grant it. So it doesn't hurt to try.
Got one more question. Okay, I'll take this one if you want. Lonnie Brinson. Lonnie Brinson asks, according to Barry versus McDonough, which is the claim the case we are just talking about that helps you jump in SMC levels, how would I apply for an increase if my last decision was 2 years ago? My current rating is SMCM with other separate disabilities rated 60, 60, 50, 50. Oh yeah, definitely want to get that to apply. What you should do is, if you don't have a decision to appeal, like we were just speaking earlier, talking about appealing, that board decision from SMC. If SMC is nowhere on appeal and you haven't had a decision in the last year, go ahead and file, I'll do a supplemental claim and know exactly what you just told us. Like under Barry versus McDonough, I'm entitled to higher steps jumps in my SMC rating. I currently have SMCM, and you want to know what's SMCM for, and then it's important to distinguish exactly how separate those other disabilities are. I have seen, for example, say someone has a aid in attendance for PTSD, and he also has a 50% rating for sleep apnea second to PTSD. To me, those are two separate conditions. Those are not related. Maybe the PTSD causes sleep apnea, but that's respiratory. That's not mental health. So I've seen it where people will treat that, where the decision maker will treat the sleep apnea as connected to the PTSD, therefore not entitled to the jumps. But I've also seen it argued successfully the other way. So that's something to consider. You don't know what the disabilities are, 60, 60, 50, 50. But you want to make sure that they're distinguishable. You can't use, let me not say that. There's a lot of creative ways to do. Allison, do you have any input on this?
My only input is negative. You're just be cognizant that if you have nothing open and you're reopening, you're poking the bear to look at your file. And so I would make sure that, what you're asking for is correct, because I wouldn't want them to start poking around and trying to find issues, because lately that's all they've been doing. But don't let that discourage you. Just make sure that, like Rachel said, that they're distinctive and you write it out for them. They're not going to just go back and be like, oh yeah, because of this case, you should have this. No, like you have to point it out to them in order to get those additional half or full steps.
But definitely worth a shot, because looking at that, if those are all separate, that would take you to, 2 half steps for 60/60, SMCN, 2 half steps for 50/50, SMCO. If you already have aid in attendance or can show you have the need for aid in attendance, that will take you to SMCR1, which is the highest rating you can get, with highest SMC without TBI or needing daily medical care in your home. Okay, well, I think we're done with our questions. Thank you everyone for sticking with us and asking questions. We really appreciate it. It's fun to think about things in these different ways. But yeah, Allison, any last words?
Always a pleasure hanging out with you.
Always a pleasure. All right, everyone have a great day. Please let us know. Tune in next time if you've got more questions.
Thank you.